And welcome back to Scarred for Life and Happy New Year? Question mark? This is the podcast where we open up old wounds by looking back at the films that scared us as kids, and I'm Terry.
And I'm Mary Beth.
And this episode is a little bit different. What are we doing this episode, Mary Beth?
So this episode, instead of interviewing a guest, we are going over our best of 2022 list, not just our top 10 movies, but our festival favorites, favorite episodes of ours from this year, favorite discoveries, overall thoughts on the year, and then also giving kind of some honorable mentions to movies that didn't make the cut, but we still think deserve a shout out. So basically, this is our big end of the year recap episode.
Hell yeah. I'm not ready.
I'm not ready. I spent 2 hours working on this.
It's been a lot of time.
Trying to figure out things, remembering lots of things that I saw at the beginning of the year, remembering things that were technically this year releases that I saw in 2021. That will continue to fuck me up forever. Mm-hmm. Because I don't like to, so I don't know about you, but I don't like to include festival releases on my best of list. I like my best of list to be like widely available movies.
Things that people could go, that a normal person could go see.
Yeah, I like it to be like more accessible. Like, hey, you don't have to only see it in like a tiny art house theater. Like it's actually now you can go rent it.
Yep.
But then I'm like, wait, hold on. That movie, yeah. So yeah, there's a lot. I know there was a lot of good fucking movies this year. And I know we'll talk about kind of the year as a whole later, but this year made it very hard to make this list. And it's a good thing, but a challenging thing.
Yeah, I think my problem with this year and the hard time I had whittling down my list was that there was a lot of really good horror movies, but not a whole lot of, for me at least, really great horror movies. So when we get to my list, there's a lot of movies that I would have rated about a 4s and not a whole lot of 4.5s or 5s on my list. There was just a lot of good quality movies out there. There was just nothing that there was a very small amount of things that went like, oh my God, that was yes, this is my favorite movie of this year. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean. I actually had a very similar, that's a good way to put it, because I was trying to put my finger on that when I was making my list, because there are a lot of movies, I have a hard time rating things, stars and shit. I never do it on Letterboxd. I don't know. It just, my brain has a hard time conceptualizing that for whatever fucking reason, but it's I go purely off of how, not purely, but how it made me feel. And there were so many movies in there that I were on the same level, but nothing, not as much kind of elevated over that. Really impressive, but didn't pack as much of an emotional punch maybe as previous years have. Mm-hmm. And I think there's something, I was thinking about this. I was writing something the other day and I was thinking about this. I'm going to save this when we talk about 2022. I'm jumping ahead a little bit. Sorry. I'm jumping ahead.
Right. So put a pin in that one.
We'll put a pin in that.
I want to hear that.
Let's talk about our festival favorites. So,
sure.
Movies that we saw at festivals this year that are either coming out next year or hopefully coming out next year.
Mm-hmm.
But things that we were really impressed by that didn't come out this year, but people should have on their radars.
Yeah.
So.
What's one of yours? I don't really have these in any order, but and I'm sure we're going to have some overlap.
I have a pretty big list, but
I do too.
Big strong word. But, okay, so I feel like my number one is The Outwaters.
Same. That one is at the top of my list.
No one. I saw The Outwaters almost a year ago, and I've been we've been championing it for a while. It's so exciting to see Robbie get so much buzz around this movie, and it's finally going to be able out there for everyone to witness. I rewatched it a couple days ago, and Christ on a Cross. I'm excited for everyone to see it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be one of the big. I do think it'll be a little bit divisive in terms of normal audiences, but for me, the things that it does with found footage in terms of going past where a lot of found footage movies end, I think is just, it's really good, and it is fucked up. It startled the shit out of me so many times. it's really good, and Robbie is a delight. So I would love to see it succeed incredibly well, because he just is a good human being.
And it's like, it doesn't have the same commercial appeal as a Terrifier 2, but the depravity is on the same level. So like, it equals out. We'll get a little art house fuckery in your life, y'all. It's good for you. But yeah.
That one's on mine. Another one that I'm really looking forward for people to see is Swallowed.
Me too!
By our boo, Carter Smith.
Boo! I'm so excited for people to finally see this fucked up, weird, gay movie about worms and love.
Mm-hmm.
It's so good.
And a very incredibly campy performance by Nightmare on Elm Street 2 Jesse himself, Mark Patton. This movie is great. Cooper Coach, I believe. Coach is, I believe, how you say his last name. Who is also, you would have seen him in this year's They/Them. He is fantastic in this as well. If this is the kind of movie that Carter really wants to make with his All the Dead Boys kind of like label, I'm here for it. Bring it on, Carter.
Me fucking too.
Transgressive queer horror.
Yes. And so to kind of round up the trifecta of the 3 movies I'm really excited to come out next year for everyone to see is Skinamarink.
Yeah, that's on mine as well.
No one. Skinamarink is out this
January.
So this is coming out in January. So this is, by the time this episode airs, it'll be about 2 weeks until it's hitting theaters on the 13th and the 14th. If you're in DC, I'm hosting a screening at Alamo Draft House. So
hell yeah!
Want to come watch this movie on the big screen and then hang out with me and be scared, come see me on Friday, January 13th at 9:30 at Alamo Draft House. Anyway,
the day before my birthday.
So, yeah, this one's good. This is another one. So, like, this is my trifecta of like Mary Beth catnip movies that people are going to either really love or think are art house trash.
Mm-hmm.
Skinamarink, we've talked about it a million times. Podcast, we talked about the short film. Fucking terrifying liminal space, nightmarish horror. Viral. Everyone is excited to see it. Very excited to see people's reactions. I tried to convince my mom to come to the screening. I was like, it's fine. I sent her screenshots from it. She's like, what is wrong with you? My family's like, we're so proud of you, but that looks really scary. And I was like, it's the scariest movie I've ever seen. And they were like, why would you tell us that? And I was like, and then my grandmother goes, there are just some things you can't erase from your mental hard drive. And I was like, thanks. Thanks, Mimi. So.
What a hip grandma.
Anyway.
Love that. Yeah, that rounds out my like 3 really, those are at the very top of my list. These aren't really in any order, but like of the ones that I'm really excited for people to see, it is these ones. But like continuing on with the weird ass movies that like is not going to be for everyone. One that I'm really excited for is for people to see is Everyone Will Burn.
Oh my god, yes! Oh my god, I forgot. Oh, how did I forget about that movie? I really liked it.
I know. I don't know.
Festival. Which festival?
I think that was like Fantastic Fest. Was it Fantastic Fest?
Yeah. Fantastic
I think.
Fest.
But this one is like an apocalyptic telenovela, small town. Everyone's screwing around with everyone else. Meanwhile, there's a prophecy that is going to bring end of times, and then a strange little girl who, in one of the opening shots, sets someone aflame, and then it just goes from there. And it is over 2 hours, but it is a wild ass movie that incorporates a whole different types of genres and is just unlike anything else I've seen this year.
It's fucking fun. It's wild.
It's a lot of fun.
It is very fun. And then I'll quickly list through mine because I got a lot, so I'll just like list through them really quick. So we're not just sitting here. But so Megalomaniac that I saw at a Fantasia, gory like kind of Belgian extremity movie. Again, another divisive one that people are going to think is either absolutely fucking repulsive or really fascinating. So excited for that. Project Wolf Hunting is coming out soon.
That's on mine.
So excited for people to experience this Evil Dead, Resident Evil, weird ass Con Air
on a ship
movie. Pieta, which is something I saw at Fantasia. It's a Spanish movie made that is about a guy whose mom has who has cancer, and it's like hyper stylized. It's so weird. It's so queer. It's made by this like queer artist from Spain. It's like, once again, shocking everybody. Very much divisive, like not a crowd pleaser, but it's so fucking weird. So I'm excited for people to experience that one. That's got like art house horror cult classic written all over it. Candyland, of course, that comes out very soon, January 6th, so it kind of just misses that mark a little bit. And then my final one is, I totally forgot about this, but I was looking back at like earlier things from the year, Future Fiction, which is the 360 horror found footage horror film I saw at the Unnamed Footage Festival in San Francisco. And it's like this incredible witch found footage movie that's shot with a 360 camera. And it's like got one of the most harrowing like 30-minute long takes I've ever seen. And it's this incredible like revenge movie. It's just so good. And
I really want to see that.
Someone please distribute it. I know it's kind of weird, but it's so good. And I just need more people to see it and advocate for it. And I don't know like when it's going to ever come out, but it's just like one of the most interesting movies I've ever seen. So
hell yeah.
I don't want that to be lost. So those are kind of the big ones. And looking back at all of the fucking movies we watched this year.
Yeah. So with mine, like I had Project Wolf Hunting, which you talked about. Unidentified Objects, which is I talked about it on Little Cuts, about this gay little person and his alien obsessed neighbor go on a road trip for their place in the universe. That one's really not horror, but like genre adjacent. Satanic Hispanics, which was a fun, and my gosh, why did the word just leave my head?
Anthology film?
My God, I just kept wanting to say anthropology. And I'm like, it's not fucking anthropology. Yes, this fun little, God, I'm going to do it again. Anthology film. Jesus Christ, Terry. This fun anthology film directed by a lot of Spanish filmmakers that is quite entertaining. Really like that one.
That's from my place of work.
It is.
Anyway.
Another one that I saw that I really want to write about is Huesera. It's now been subtitled Huesera the Bone Woman.
I'm so excited. I haven't seen it yet. I'm so excited.
I have a lot of thoughts on this one in terms of queer representation and what it's doing with subverting a lot of expectations in terms of what we typically see in a possession film.
Okay.
Yeah. I want to write about it. It's great. Yeah. It's a fantastic movie. And then finally Dawning, which I know you saw. Yeah.
The Korean movie?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh.
Yeah.
It all came back to me. Oh my God.
That movie is a lot. It surprised the hell out of me.
Good God.
Yeah. I really can't say much about it.
Yeah, that's what it's like.
But keep that one on your roster. I think that's going to be a surprise for a lot of people next year. It was really good. I'm hoping that it'll come out next year.
Hopefully. I haven't heard anything actually, but
I haven't either.
Fingers crossed.
But yeah, those are the ones that really stuck out to me this year. There was a lot. We saw a lot of festivals, and I'm sure we're missing a number of them. But like, those are the ones that, like, for me, just instantly as I was looking back at my letterbox list, just jumped out at me as like yes.
Yeah. And then, let's look to the future a little bit and talk about what we're looking forward to next year.
I'm looking forward to all these festival favorites coming out for sure. Some of them, the ones that at least have distribution. I'm looking forward to the new Scream movie. Wow, I think that's going to be fun.
Yeah. I'm very curious what they're going to do with New York.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm excited to see that. It's going to be another year of the franchise, I feel like, because there's going to be the new Evil Dead movie, which I'm really excited for. I'm so fucking excited for. New Scream. We have the new Insidious movie, and Patrick Wilson is directing for the first time the Insidious movie.
Yeah. Come on our podcast, Patrick. I promise I won't call you Daddy to your face.
I will. Why lie? Why lie for the timeline? There's a bunch of other ones, but those are like the big franchise ones I'm excited for. I know there's going to be like
Is The Exorcist coming out next year?
Yeah, but like I'm not like excited for that. A friend of the pod, Brandon Cronenberg's new movie is coming out, Infinity Pool. It looks fucking wild. Mia Goth and Alexander Skarsgård. I'd watch that sex tape. So,
yes, please.
And that's going to be at Sundance. It's going to be at Sundance in January, and I'm very excited to watch it at Sundance and just silently sit in my apartment salivating over this movie. It gives the trailer... Have you watched the trailer?
Yeah.
It gives me big Crimes of the Future vibes. So what if him and his dad are making, like, some weird joint world together? Wouldn't that be crazy?
That'd be fucking awesome.
Anyway. And then I'm also really excited. I think it comes out in 2023. The new Kevin Williamson slasher, Sick.
Sick, yeah. I've heard a lot of good things about it.
I've heard really good things about it, but I wasn't able to see it. They wouldn't send me a screener. Rude. And so I just, really want to fucking see it. I've heard such good things.
Yeah, I'm here for that.
I'm very excited for that one, too.
I think there's going to be some good stuff next year. Disappointment Boulevard?
Yeah, now it's Beau is Afraid, I think, is what they changed the
name
is it?
To. Okay.
Yeah. That's the new Ari Aster movie that's like 3.5 hours long. What is with these white men? Chantal Ackerman and Jean Dielman they're the only ones allowed to be 3.5 hours long. But yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be another great year for horror movies. I'm excited for all the things that are going to pop up at festivals that are going to be like surprising because we have Sundance so soon. So I'm always like excited to see what is in store for us there.
All right, so let's turn to the pod a little bit. What was your favorite Little Cuts discovery, or discoveries for this year?
I have a couple because I was looking through my letterbox. So again, I was like, "Fuck, I've forgotten everything that we've ever covered." So thank God, I'm usually pretty good about like logging things on Letterboxd. My number one was Exotica.
That's on mine too.
We watched that towards the end of our erotic thriller watch through, and that was actually at the end of January of this year, so it was almost a year ago. Mm-hmm. And that was like one of the most incredible movies I've ever seen, and I think was like a profoundly affecting experience for me. And I still like think about the way I felt when I watched that movie for the first time. It's been a year, so. Me too. And I bought it, and it came to Criterion this year. I own it now on Blu-ray. It's beautiful.
I forgot it came to Criterion. I need to get that.
I will ask no one. I don't feel like I can watch that. Like, the movie feels kind of dirty, so like, I don't think I ever want to watch it with anybody. But that was like the best movie I watched. That like was the best movie that we watched for the podcast. Like one of the best movies I've ever watched for the podcast. Like that and Black Christmas. So good. It was so good.
It was so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was on mine. I only had 2 on mine, but that one was like up there. Once I was looking back to my list and I saw that, I was like, oh, that was this year. Yes, that was so good. I was blown away by it.
Oh yeah.
And that was a recommendation from Joe Lipsett, friend of the show.
Joe, Chef's Kiss, incredible recommendation.
So good.
Yeah. I had another one from Erotic Thrillers, The Boy Next Door, solely because of the first edition of the Odyssey line. Edition. I had to bring it up because it's my favorite. Like, it's the best moment. Just discussing that, like, I bust you.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
That was so good.
So good.
That was a queer camp classic right there.
I know, but then. Just to run through my list, I only have a couple more. Eyes of Fire.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was just, like, so weird. And, like, I just kind of stuck with me in thinking about folk horror. And I think a lot about it. I need to rewatch both of these, but, like, that and Ravenous kind of was, like, an interesting kind of comparison in my head a little bit with, like, the use of the American frontier and all this, like, discussion of indigenous populations and mysticism and shit. But I just really liked that movie, like, stuck with me more than I expected it to. Then The Old Dark House, I figured that would be on your list too. Just out of the horror comedies, after thinking about it and looking back at what we watched, like, just queer, incredible James Whale, like, fuck yeah. And then Chucky. I mean, I know we're doing the Child's Play stuff, but, like, I'm so glad I'm watching all the Child's Play movies. Like, I'm having the best time, having an excuse to finally catch up with everything, so... Yeah, those are my favorites. We've watched some good shit this year. I was looking through everything. I was like, we've watched some really good stuff. Like,
yeah.
But what else was on your list?
I mean, I just kept it to 2. Exotica and The Old Dark House were the ones that like literally jumped out at me as being some of the best cinema that I've experienced this year as a first time watch that wasn't from this year. Like just The Old Dark House just like really spoke to me in such a way. Like I was not prepared for it to simultaneously create and lampoon its own genre. Like subgenre of horror is like the Old Dark House kind of horror, because we've seen that repeated throughout history of like strangers appearing at a mansion and spooky shit goes down. Like that's been Rocky Horror Picture Show. Like it's been lampooned through much, but here it's both a horror comedy, very sly, very dry and witty horror comedy, but it's also creating this entire cinematography of how we think of the Gothic mansion. And it's so fucking gorgeous. And I don't know. It was like, if I wanted to live in a movie, I would want to live in that movie for a while. Because I don't know. There's just something very special about it. Yeah. And I was so happy to finally see it.
Yeah, me too. Hell yeah. What about your favorite episodes? Our actual interviews and full episodes? And I want to hear I feel like we probably have a couple of similar ones, but I want to hear your list.
So I kind of split this into 2. I wanted to talk about 2 movies that were first time watch for me this year because of the podcast that I just really was so happy to finally experience, and that was The Other.
That's on my list too.
It was from episode 146 with our conversation with the Orphan First Kill director, William Brent Bell, where he introduced The Other, not The Others, The Other from the 1970s that like is this creepy kid movie that kind of invents a whole lot of sub horror tropes that we see, subgenre horror tropes, words are hard, that we'll see repeated throughout time. And it's in this little movie that not a lot of people talk about. And it's a fantastic movie. I really wish it would get seen from like the Criterion Collection, or someone would pick it up and really do it justice and bring it back to our collective experiences, because that movie I absolutely loved. And then another one was a few episodes later, episode 152, where we watched Carnival of Souls with the Den filmmaker Zachary Donahue. That movie, first time watch for me, blew me away. Loved it.
Yeah, I agree. That didn't make I was gonna put that on my list because that was like, that movie blew me away, and now of course I own it because it was an incredible experience. I also have the Killing Fields episode with Maddie Doe, which is episode 123. I know that was one of our favorite episodes we've ever done. But between talking to Maddie Doe, who directed The Long Walk that came out this year about grief and the loss of her dog, but then also talking about the Killing Fields and like her family's own experience with the topic, and just, it was such an incredibly personal and honest conversation. Again, it wasn't like our normal kind of horror movie, what you think of as a horror movie, but I think those are sometimes our best episodes. So it was an honor to talk to her and have her share so much about with us. So that was definitely, I think, my favorite episode of this entire year.
Yeah, that was definitely on my favorite episode list.
Yeah.
Did you have others?
Yeah, so I also really enjoyed our conversation about Don't Look Now with Vanessa and Joseph Winter, because I had seen Don't Look Now before, but in the episode, which episode 155, I watched it with my dad, who really didn't like it and was like shitting on it the whole time. And this time I watched it and fell in love with it. Like, actually fell in love with it. And so I think that conversation really I was just so glad to bring this movie back into my head as something that I knew was really good, but like being able to like be in a place to really appreciate it, I think was really important for me this year. So, and then I also had a couple of the other ones I have on here mostly just because they were really fun to talk about. I had Willy Wonka episode 122 with Maggie Robertson, who is Lady Dimitrescu. She's just really fun, and that was a really cool conversation with her. The Changeling episode 125 with Robbie Banfitch, because it's fucking chaotic of all time. Like, if you want an episode that is just like if you want something different, but not like in like an emotional way, but in like a what is happening kind of experimental audio experience kind of way, that's what you should listen to that episode. It's really awesome.
Go off the fucking rails with that.
Robbie was just like smoking cigarettes the whole time. It was absolutely incredible.
It was incredible.
The Good Son conversation with Devin Das, episode 136.
Oh yeah,
because this movie freaks me out so much, so it was wild to get to revisit it and like relive my step sister stepbrother trauma. And then one of our most recent episodes, 164, The Exorcist again with John R. Leonetti, was just a really, really cool look. And we have a lot of guests within a certain age range.
Yeah.
So getting a guest like John, who has a little bit more, has a lot more experience and kind of has been around the industry longer than a lot of our guests have been, was really cool to get his perspective on the genre and hearing all these really cool stories. That was just a really cool episode full of horror history that I had never known about. So that was just another one of my favorites. So
yeah, I mean, we have a lot of crossovers. Robbie Banfitch and the Changeling, I literally wrote for the pure chaos and good times is my rationale for it. I had Maddie Doe because the raw emotion. I cried while we were recording that episode.
Yeah.
The talks about the animals really hit me. Just that whole episode was just, it's perfection. I think that episode is our best episode, honestly. I also had Maggie Robertson because it's Lady Dimitrescu, and I can't believe that we got her on our podcast, and that was so wild to me. I also had John Leonetti on it because I could have listened to him talk forever. I wish we'd had more time to just hear about his stories, because this is a person, like you said, Mary Beth, and I was thinking about, I feel like we're sharing the same brain right now, because a lot of our guests are, first-time directors or people that have been working for a small amount of time. And this was someone who has been working in the industry for years. I mean, he was, I think he said a PA on Poltergeist. We're talking
he wasn't even
80s.
He was a grip. He held a microphone.
Grip, yes, the grip.
It was something. Yeah, it was a grip. Something super basic.
Yeah, and so he's been working in Hollywood and working in cinema and creating the look of horror films as a DP. It's just hearing all of his stories, and he was just such a kind, warm-hearted person that I was just I wish we had another hour to just listen to you kind of nostalgic talk about all the stuff you've been involved with. It was so good.
It was so
And then the final one that I had was Queer for Fears author Dr. Heather Petrocelli and Silkwood, because it was such an insightful conversation. I loved hearing talking to her about her study about queer horror. I loved all of that. And she was such a warm person as well. It was just a great conversation.
Yeah. And I'm glad I watched Silkwood. Never would have watched that depressing ass experience.
Same.
When I was going through the list of all of our episodes, we've had just another incredible year. It was so hard to pick. I know I had a lot on my list, but there were just so many good conversations that either the movie was incredible or the person was just really fun. And it's just so cool that we've had so many good conversations, and I'm proud of us for another really cool year.
I know. Much higher percentage of good to bad conversations.
Yes, would agree. 10 out of 10 would agree with that. But switching gears back to 2022 as a whole, let's talk about the year and some of our favorite moments, favorite performances, and kind of just reflect on going back to what I was talking about from 2022, what I was talking about both at the beginning. But
what did you have your pin on? What were you?
So
I'm curious.
I think with 2022 is, I think what's happening is we're seeing I think we had early 2000, the 2000s were kind of a swing, and the campy torture porny, not as emotionally maybe deep movies. And then in the 2010s to 2020s, these are all very sweeping generalizations. I'm speaking in sweeping generalizations. So we had kind of the elevated horror movement kind of build in the 2010s, and we had all of those movies kind of come up, and we had the kind of higher brow horror movies take dominance. And I think what we're seeing now in 2022 is an equalization of that, where we aren't just all highbrow and we're not all just bloody slasher gore for entertainment's sake. We're kind of hitting a really interesting equilibrium, which means I don't think we get as many emotionally affecting horror movies, but we also get a ton of movies that Barbarian and Smile that are original and aren't, I guess Smile has a deeper meaning, obviously, but we get these movies that are swinging for the fences a little bit more in terms of being ridiculous and not trying to convey a higher meaning. And even the higher meaning movies, I think, are trying to shy away from being too highbrow. And I think there's an interesting equilibrium happening right now, which is, I think, why it kind of explains why it feels like there's a lot of really good movies, but not as many that have like the gut punch that like maybe A Relic had on us a couple of years ago, or Hereditary. Like, I think because we're moving more towards less full-on trauma porn movies into like, so it's interesting to see the trend, how like the trends are swinging.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page, because I was thinking, I think years from now, once we start to look back at this time period, we're going to see that the last 2 years have been kind of a transitionary period.
Yeah.
That is probably moving a little bit away from the kind of high-minded type of stuff that has dominated the last decade-ish, I would say.
Yeah.
Because I do think there's a lot of stuff that's popping up on our list that might have maybe some highbrow thoughts in the back of its mind, but it's still giving us pure genre. And I think that might also be, as you sort of stated, why it's sort of hard to... I think it's going to be kind of hard because the last few years when we've done this, there have been movies that have been gut punch of movies that like just... Yes, this was my favorite movie of the year. Easy to descriptors, but like this year there was a whole lot more entertainment, I would say, in terms of like being a more entertaining film than necessarily something with high-minded type of metaphors and ideals and all that kind of stuff going on there. So I agree. I do think that a few years down the line, we're going to see this as a transitionary period into whatever's coming next. Maybe a combination.
Yeah, and I think I also think it reflects how people are going back to theaters too. Because I mean, like, you know, we saw Nope, Smile, Barbarian, Scream, Terrifier 2 even, like, kind of marked the return of the big kind of blockbuster. And it feels weird to call Terrifier a blockbuster, but, like, it kind of weirdly falls into that category now, which is fucking wild. But of, like, wanting people to go back to the movies and and kind of realizing, and understandably so, that, like, the wider population is not, like, going to always want to go see Hereditary. Like, they want the more entertaining, like, and we'll talk about this, like, all of these movies are smart. They're not, like, that, like you were saying, they're still very smart, but they're entertainment forward. Like, again, like you're saying, it's focused on entertaining and scaring and kind of eliciting this more emotional reaction from you that's like fun, and then having the deeper conversations kind of going on a little bit more in the background.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. And I think it's, again, a
lot less slow burns, I would say.
Yeah. Which is so funny, because, like, I watched a lot of slow burns this year, but it's like...
Oh, I did too.
But also, like, we're a little bit different, because we're watching all of, like, the festival slow burn movies that not as many people are going to see. But I also think in a lot of those slow burns, or, like, the movies that are even, like... the indie festival movies are similar. Like, there's just so much weird shit. And there always is. But I just feel like things are getting even weirder. Thumbs up.
Yeah, thumbs up, 100%. I also think this year was obviously the year of the franchise. I mean, we had Texas Chainsaw Massacre. We had Scream. We had Prey. We had Hellraiser. We have Halloween. Am I missing anything?
Oh, God. It was...
We're having the Chucky TV series.
The new
Hocus Pocus came back. Like, this is definitely, like, the year of old things coming back.
Pearl is becoming a franchise, but it's not the same thing. It's different.
Not the same thing, but yeah.
Yeah. It really was, though. It was, like, the year of reboots and reimaginings, and we started seeing that more, but this year was definitely the big, like, horror events back to back to back kind of situation.
We almost had Evil Dead Rise almost came out this year if HBO Max didn't shit the bed with all of its programming. And luckily we're getting a theatrical experience of this movie, which is what was not originally in the cards.
So excited for a theatrical experience of this. Oh, it's going to be so good. The Cronin rules. But I also think that this year there were some, like, incredible powerhouse performances, mostly from women in horror, but there was a couple men that also really stood out, and I just, like, made a list of all of the girlies from this year that have been in either multiple or, like, really incredible roles in horror, because there was a lot of them this year. Like, this was the year of Jenna Ortega. Everyone knows this girly. Jenna Ortega in Scream. She was in X. And she's Wednesday, obviously. So she is, like, big now in the whole, like, horror world now. She is, like, Scream Queen extraordinaire. Then we also have Micah Monroe had the big year this year between Significant Other and Watcher. She's incredible. Then I also Olivia Lucardi is my other big breakout star of the year. Like Jenna Ortega is going to get all the attention, but Olivia Lucardi was in Soft and Quiet, and she was in Candyland. And I think that like she is someone to really keep an eye on. She's really, really scary. And she had some really incredible performances this year. Obviously, we had Mia Goth. Everyone's talking about Mia Goth. We know, we get it. She's cool. I love her. But then we also have, I wanted to shout out Anna Diop, who was in Nanny, who was the lead in Nanny.
Oh, mm-hmm.
She's incredible. And then Laura Galan from Piggy. She is also incredible. And then the two dudes I like to shout out are Owen Campbell, who was in, he was an X with Jenna Ortega. He was also in Candyland. And then he was also in something else that I can't remember. It doesn't matter. But he was in My Heart Can't Beat Unless You Tell It To last year. And he is in a bunch of stuff now. And he is another incredible horror actor to keep your eye on. So, and then my last shout out is Neil Maskell in Bull. He was just real scary. I talked about him in our Little Cuts episode about how scary he is in that movie. But those are just, like, there was just some really good performances this year. Like, even if a movie maybe didn't totally speak to me, it was, like, the performances. There are some just, like, incredible performances this year. So,
I wanted to add to that, Jasmine Savoy Brown.
Also yes.
In Scream and Yellow Jackets, giving us fantastic performances, as well as Lauren Ambrose from Servant, and also she's going to be in Yellow Jackets this next year. She's leaving Servant to go do Yellow Jackets, and I'm super excited to see. I'm super excited to see her continue on. Yeah. But it's also the year, like, I was thinking about monologues between Rebecca Hall, her monologue in Resurrection, and Mia Goth in Pearl.
Uh-huh.
I'm sure there's more, but those are the two that, like, jumped up to my head because I know that I've seen, like, oh, here's another monologue. We've had a lot this year.
I mean, The Righteous was the movie of monologue. It was the movie of monologues. Right. Mm-hmm. It was really, there was a lot of waxing poetic this year.
There really was.
Which is interesting.
Also the year of food and the year of cannibals.
Oh my god, the year of food. It is the year of food and cannibals. I was so into the fact that it was like culinary horror year between The Menu and then Flex Gourmet and the Andy Baker tape. It was...
And Fresh.
Oh yeah, because that's cannibals and
food.
And then we have...
Keeping Company.
Yep, and then we have Bones and All. There was a French cannibal movie too.
Feed Me was one as well.
Yeah, Jesus. Are we okay?
A lot of cannibals. A lot of cannibals this year.
Are we okay as a society? Probably not, right?
Probably not.
Ooh. And it was also a good year for found footage. I wrote a whole list about it for Dread Central, so we don't have to talk about it for too long. But we had Deadstream, we had VHS 99, we had Incantation, like, we had some big, like, found footage, like, pillars happening, and then we'll have, obviously, the Outwaters next year, but then there was some really good, like, under the radar stuff that was really cool.
There was one on your list that I was like, ooh, I need to add this to my list, and I can't remember what it was called. So I am revamping some more.
Does it have to do with video games?
Deadware.
Yes, yeah,
Deadware.
Isaac Rodriguez. Isaac Rodriguez makes a million fucking found footage movies a year. He is prolific. He actually works with Thomas Burke, who we talked about the Barbados Project, which is also on my list. But that one is a really cool, like, throwback to video, like 2001 early video games.
It brought me back. Horror. Just seeing that screenshot that you included brought me back to the early 2000s. For sure. And I was like, ooh, I should add this one to my to my list.
Yes, it's good. So before we get into our top 10, we're going to share some movies that didn't fully make the cut. And I feel like I have so many movies that didn't make the cut because there were so many good movies that I wanted to include. And this is really hard.
This was very hard. I honestly feel like maybe the top 6 through 10 of my movies could have been swapped with a lot of these movies.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a very similar experience. Let's hear it.
So what are some? Oh, okay. Well,
you first.
I'm not going to talk about some of these because I do think at least one of these is probably on your list, but Bones and All did not quite make my list.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Scream didn't quite make my list.
It didn't make mine either.
Dawn Breaks Behind the Eyes.
I
really enjoyed that one.
I really enjoyed it. That was on my honorable mentions list too.
Hellraiser.
Oh yeah.
Did not make my list. Deadstream did not make my list.
Yeah, me neither.
Soft and Quiet.
That one was very close. That one was very, very close.
I'm including it because after our conversation, our 2-hour-long conversation that we had for Patreon, I had a newfound appreciation for that film. Hellbender did not quite make my 10.
Yeah.
But I loved it.
Yes.
And Nope, which is probably the big surprise, did not make my list.
Interesting. Well, see, X didn't make my list. So
okay.
I had to make some sacrifices. I had to have a long, hard conversation with myself. And I wanted to prioritize movies that made me feel something more deep emotionally.
Okay.
Like, my top 10 list, this is not like any, if people come for people for top 10 lists, I'm like, it's all like bubblegum and like paper clips about my rationale here. Like, who cares? Like, it's all about how these movies made me like emotionally cry and feel about myself. Like, it's not, obviously this isn't objective, but I just had so many really good experiences watching movies this year. But I also had Two Witches on my list.
Oh, yep.
A movie that I really, really, really loved. It just didn't quite crack it. Nanny, which I really enjoyed. It didn't crack, but it's like very much, it's in my top 20. The Innocents was another one, didn't make my list, but I still really loved it, and I still want people to see it. The Harbinger, which was an incredible piece of COVID horror, the best piece of like pandemic COVID horror I've seen. That kind of like had a lot of festival buzz, then came out with nothing. And I'm like, wait, guys, this is a really good fucking movie. Like, you should be watching it. Like, what's going on? So that's frustrating to me. And then two that were like kind of surprises for me were Brea Grant's Torn Hearts. The country horror. And I'm saying this one because like not like, again, it didn't come out with a lot of like attention, and I think it's really, did you see this?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love this like candy coated honky tonk country aesthetic in a horror movie with all of these women like trying to just beat the shit out of each other. I think it is, I wish we had more of it. And I think it's really fun. I think Katie Sagal has a really incredible performance in this. The outfits are incredible. So I think that's like one of the fun horror movies that really flew under the radar this year that more people should check out. Mm-hmm. And then Significant Other, which is a huge surprise. Yeah. The Micah Monroe, Jake Lacey movie from the guys who did Villains. I was just really surprised at how much this surprised me and how much fun I had with it. So
okay, if you haven't seen this movie yet, or you care about spoilers, skip ahead about 10 seconds, because this was on like my favorite. If I were to have like a favorite moment of the year, this one would be on it, because this forest movie turns into a fucking shark attack movie in the best way possible. And it killed me.
It's
and
incredible.
I was cackling with joy. End of spoiler. Welcome back.
So, those were some of the ones I really wanted to shout out. I'll be posting screenshots of my top 20 on Twitter, just because I hate making decisions, and numbers are rough, but a top 20 podcast episode would take fucking forever.
It would take forever.
I'll post screenshots of those, because there were just so many good movies this year, and like really surprising, unique movies, and I think directors really kind of like this year we're seeing people like how people have swung for the fences the past couple of years, like pre/early COVID, and like these filmmakers are kind of finally getting their due, and it's very exciting.
I agree. Well,
oh no,
I guess we're up to our top 10. It's finally happening. So
yes, I think I feel confident. I think I feel confident in this list.
Well, so what start us off? What is your top 10 horror movie of 2022?
Okay, so sliding in the number 10 spot for me is When I Consume You, directed by Perry Blackshear.
Oh shit, that was such a good one.
So this has been hovering in like the 11 to 13 spot for a while, because I was like, I have to include like these movies, like I have to. I was foolish, like I have to include these movies, like I have to. No, you don't. Fuck that. Who's to say? And so I actually ended up taking out a couple bigger titles, including X, to put in movies this year that had such a deeply profound emotional impact on me when I watched them, and like were affecting. Because I think I have had, this is getting personal, sorry, I've had a hard time this year with burnout and being excited about movies this year because, not to complain, but when your job is watching movies all the time, it becomes really hard to enjoy them as much as you used to. And so a lot of these movies that I'm talking about on this list made me excited to watch movies again. And When I Consume You is just a movie that made me so excited for what horror can do in terms of creating deeply emotional, upsetting storytelling that isn't just scary. And we talked to Perry Blackshear, which is an incredible conversation. But yeah, I think this one is just, I haven't been able to stop thinking about it since I saw it. And I think it's just one of those quiet releases that came out this year that really, I love Benson and Moorhead. This deserves just as much love as a Benson and Moorhead movie. It's just, it's gorgeous. So that's my number 10.
That's a good choice. It should have been at least in my top 15. I'm sad that I didn't include that with my. There's just so many movies.
I know, and this one fluctuated, and then I was like, no, I have to put it in there. It's just yeah. What about you?
I think what I'm hearing from what you're saying is similar to me. I'm not writing about movies as much as you are. You're writing so much about movies, but the burnout is real. I went back to look at my site and I realized I haven't reviewed a movie in a very long time, and it's because I just have. It's been a rough year. I've not been really excited about cinema this last year, and so the movies that sort of keep popping up to me are ones that. Listen, I think the other thing is that I'm going to be 42 in a couple of weeks, and it's hard for me to get excited about the same old kind of movies that I've been seeing. And I feel and I'm going to talk about this a little bit more once we get to a particular movie, but there are a lot. It's really hard to surprise me anymore, and I think I'm getting kind of bored. So my list is movies this year that sort of were unexpected surprises for the most part is what we'll be seeing. But my 10 slot. If you've been listening to us for as long as we've been doing this, I reserve it for a movie that I think needs more attention. And this one that is my 10th spot skewers the rich, politicians, generational wealth, corporate greed through a lens of horror tropes, including cannibalism. There's been a number of cannibal films this year, and this one was the biggest surprise for me when I saw it at Panic Fest last year. It's Keeping Company.
Oh, yay! Keeping Company.
Who we had. Devin Doss, the co-writer, or I think co-writer and also the actor on the podcast. And it's about a pair of insurance salesmen who kind of Forrest Gump their way into being caught by a serial killer who has been kidnapping forgotten members of society for their meat because he is selling it to different corporations for cheap food. And meanwhile, there's insurance company that the agents are working for that don't want to pay out their life insurance. And so there's some of that going on. Meanwhile, there's a politician who's running on I'm sweeping up the junk on the street type of, I'm using quotations, type of campaign. And it sort of viciously skewers all aspects of capitalism and corporate greed and the ruthlessness it takes to succeed in that. And it's very funny and it plays with genre incredibly well. And if you're going to go see a cannibal movie about rich corporate things and you have a choice between Fresh and Keeping Company, I'm going to give you Keeping Company because it's
agreed.
Much better film. Sorry about it.
I agree.
So that's my top 10. That's my number 10.
I'm so glad. Yeah, I was really, I know because you had been talking about it for a bit, and I was so glad it came out this year and we could watch it. And again, I know there more people need to see. It's a really good cannibal satire.
One would call it biting, because cannibals. Yeah.
What?
It's cannibalism, just biting. I'm here all week, folks. All right. So that's our number 10s. What about number 9 for you, Mary Beth?
Okay, number 9 is another movie that was an emotional gut punch that made me cry. This is Addison Hyman's Hypochondriac, which we talked about when it first came out at South by Southwest. It is a movie that has spoken to me incredibly deeply because it is about a queer person who is estranged from a parent, and then the mental illness of that parent begins manifesting in the person, and they start spiraling and going through a mental breakdown as they are kind of grappling with their kind of newly intensifying mental illness. which is an experience very directly correlates to experiences I have had, which is very scary and very hard to watch on screen, and also very validating, and it was a very difficult watch, but also a very important watch and an incredibly important movie. I think this is one of the most hopeful queer horror movies I've ever seen, which sounds strange when you watch it, but the ending is so incredibly hopeful in a way that, like, is perfect. So I think it's just, like, one of the best queer horror movies we've seen in a while, especially in terms of grappling with characters who are complicated and not perfect, and also just, like, there's no good or bad. It's all just, like, a fucking black and white, not black and white, like, just a gray wash fucking mess of a situation. And I just think Addison did an incredible job with it. And I think, you know, it just spoke to me on such a ridiculously deep emotional level that I had to put it. There was just, like, this is one of the few, this is one of those movies that just, like, so deeply spoke to me this year. I was like, how the fuck did you, like, pull that very specific experience out of my brain and put it on screen? So that's my number 9.
It's not on my list, although I feel like it should be. I'm now looking at my list and thinking, damn, I should have included that one, because
that's gonna be us this whole time. We're just gonna be like, fuck.
Because, like, for me, it's that ending. It's that ending of acceptance and understanding that things aren't going to go away, but that you can find a path forward through it.
And you can find love, too. Like,
And you can find love.
You are inherently lovable, no matter what. And we all really need to hear that more than I think we ever care to admit.
Yeah. Whew. Yeah. So that one, now that I'm thinking about it, that one definitely, that ending in particular, just, like, really, it should have been on this list.
It's too many good movies. What about you? What is your number 9?
My number 9 is the fact that one of my biggest disappointments this year was not being able to see a Dan Trachtenberg sci-fi horror film on the big screen. And we've had a lot of franchises this year, a lot of sequels this year. But this one seemed to understand the heritage of its source material and played with it in fun and surprising ways. I'm talking about Prey, the Predator sequel,
Predator universe, movie. The PCU.
It harkens the PCU. It harkens back to the original Predator by presenting heroes who are outclassed by an alien threat, but through their, like, you know, determination, learning, growing, and some luck, are able to fight back against overwhelming forces. It plays with expectations incredibly well, and with a little dialogue is able to give us enough story about the character motivations that I was completely on board. I do think there's some iffy CG and effects work in some parts of it, but this is easily the best Predator sequel we've gotten, and I would say it actually holds its own against the original. Also, Predator is daddy, and I would fuck him. The
Predator reveal, when, like, the bear blood is, like...
Oh, so good.
So good. And Amber Midthunder in that fucking movie.
She's incredible.
As Naru, incredible. And I just love that she is, like, a badass female character who is shown making mistakes like any other person, but also just being, like, a resourceful badass. And all that stupid discourse about, like, oh, women can do that. Shut the fuck up. Like,
shut the fuck up.
Shut your hole. Like, I don't want to hear it.
Or the calls that she's a Mary Sue. I'm like, dude, do you not see the points where she fucks up? Where she learns from her fuck ups?
Yeah.
And takes everything that she learned and uses it against the Predator, just like Arnold did? Hello?
Yeah. Again, if people just want to find problems, it's like, it's woke. I'm like, just because there's a chick in it and that, like, Indigenous people are playing Indigenous characters. It doesn't mean it's woke. Like, it's so wild, like, that these are the kind, like, it's literally an alien fighting people. It's like the same, but even more badass, because it's bad, like, it's just whatever. Anyway, yes, this was not on my list, but I had a really fun time watching it. I was so surprised, and I think this was, like, an interesting test case of, like, oh, look, like, a streaming movie like this can really do well, because I feel like this is one of the, like, top performing, like, streaming only releases. I feel like it beat out Hellraiser. I don't have literally anything to prove with that.
I think that's true.
I should have done research, but yeah, like, it was so successful, which I think is awesome.
And shout out to Dan for including a Comanche? Was it Comanche?
Comanche, yeah, Comanche
language track of it, filming the scenes twice
Look,
in order to include that.
I am going to be a Debbie Downer and say I wish an Indigenous person would have directed it, but it's still really good. Here I come.
Of course.
The woke police. Knock, knock. But anyway, yeah, no, it's incredibly well done. All
right. Number 8. What's your 8?
Taking like a full like tonal shift to a movie that just like left me very just like in awe of what was happening. This is Orphan First Kill, William Brent Bell's prequel to Orphan. I think a lot of us were pretty on the fence about whether or not this would be a good movie. Because how do you make Isabel Fuhrman, who is a full-grown adult, into, or like who is now actually full-grown and no longer a child? How do you make her look like a child again? The answer is camera trickery and platform boots, and it's incredible. And Julia Stiles is in it, and they are just turning camp performance like no other, and it's just so fucking fun. Like, that movie had no right to be as fun as it is, but William Brent Bell just kind of embraces the wildness of it and just goes for it, and it's just, one of my biggest surprises of the year, how much I enjoyed this movie and the fact that it's even on my list. It's a lot of fun. It's a little further down on my list just because it was like, I'm sorry, it's like junk food a little bit. Like, it's junk food, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. It was really fun, but
no, there's a lot of junk food on my list this year.
Like, but damn, I just had so much fun with that movie.
It's great. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
Is it on your list further up?
I don't know.
Oh, okay, cool. So I can always tell. I can always like, but then okay. So that's my number 8. And what about your number 8?
My number 8 is probably a stretch for the horror genre, but I will say that I think it plays with horror conceits and like the thriller language enough that I'm including it. It's also probably a dark horse contender because I sometimes think I'm in the minority on this one, but Bodies, Bodies, Bodies was one of my favorite theatrical experiences this year.
You are the third person I've seen put that on their like a top 10 list this year. Yeah. 2 of the Dread Central staff writers put it on their top 10s too. Okay.
I found it funny, slightly suspenseful, and a mean-spirited take on kind of an Agatha Christie story. I knew immediately what happened and how the person died, or what that I knew immediately kind of sort of what happened, but maybe not the how and the why it happened. Okay. That the film was building towards, but like that didn't ruin my experience or dampen the satire of the film. I think the cast is uniformly great. It was a joy to see Rachel Sennett. Is that her name? Sennett,
I think.
Sennett from Shiva Baby, just going bonkers and just having a great time. It was a little on the nose with the like podcasting thing. Podcasting is really hard. Yeah, it is. Preach, Rachel. I'm here for it. And yes, I would love to be the meat between a Lee Pace and a Pete Davidson sandwich.
Stinky.
So that's just.
I enjoyed Buddies. I enjoyed it a lot. I think
it's junk food.
I think people were like unnecessarily shitty about it. I don't think it's got like the like, we talked about this when we first saw it. It's not like the like TikTok millennial jargon. It's like actually quite smart. And I think the marketing really did it a disservice of trying to kind of make it seem like it was dumb, like about dumb people who were just like vapid. Like, yeah, they're vapid, but they're not all stupid. And the script is also really smart. So I think that was like
it's a very smart script.
It's a big bummer of a marketing thing from A24 trying to be like, look, Charlie XCX and Pete Davidson. And it's just like, yeah, you had all of the ingredients. You just somehow fumbled the final product. But yeah, I really, that was a fun watch from this year.
Like I said, this my list is going to be a lot of that because it surprised me. I think that's what I was kind of looking for this year. Something to like re-energize my desire to watch cinema. All right. Number 7. What is your number 7?
Lucky number 7. Speaking of things that kind of mix it up or a little bit different, so my number 7 is actually Peter Strickland's new film Flux Gourmet, which is one of the big culinary, well, big is a strong word, but one of the culinary horror films from this year. And I included this on here because it is just one of like the most unique and weird things I've seen all year. it's Peter Strickland, who did In Fabric, who did Barbarian Sound Studio. Like, he obviously very much has a style. Very much kind of a way of making movies. And this one is one of his most grounded movies, which is saying something, that takes place in like in a different world where instead of rock stars, the musicians use food as instruments. And so it's like traveling groups of musicians who play food and do performance art. And it's very strange. And this collective gets a special grant to live at this conservatory for food musicians, and craft some beautiful, like, magnum opus with food. And the person who is basically like the journalist who is documenting their their time there and their creations has celiac disease, and he's dealing with gastrointestinal issues while also being surrounded by food. And it is a movie that, again, was kind of looked at like, look, he farts a lot, fart movie. But actually, it's really fucking beautiful and smart and weird, and a really interesting movie about making art and the world around making art, and like what it means to make art. And it's just really cool and really fucking weird. And it's just Strickland, while being grounded, also making this absolutely bananagram surrealist space. And it's just another movie I wish we had seen this year. But if you're looking for like something just gorgeous to look at and kind of bizarre but weirdly affecting, Flux Gourmet.
Yeah, speaking of not seeing it, I've not seen that one this year. So I'm really kind of kicking myself for not seeing it.
It's that good shit.
It looks fun.
And Gwendolyn Christie is so hot in this movie. It's impeccably designed. It's so weird. It's so Peter Strickland. So if you liked any of his other movies, you will love this one.
Hell yeah.
But what about your number 7?
So when we were offered to speak with this director, we said yes before watching the film. And sometimes that can go completely south because we tend to like to interview and share movies we believe in. And this particular movie should not have been good. And yet, Orphan First Kill managed to somehow blow the original film's twist out of the water for me. The script is deceptively smart. It kind of begins as a rehash of the first film, but then it begins to we have like this opening with the mental institution where she's stuck at, and then after we get that, it kind of hits similar beats to the original Orphan, with Esther trying to fit in with the family, kind of falling for the father figure, eventually turning murderous. But it lulls you into thinking that this is just sort of like a cash grab kind of prequel type thing. But it starts to turn the tables at the midpoint, and the glorious twist had me gaping like a fish and cackling madly. I was like, this is fantastic. And it takes the kind of inherent camp of the first one and just sort of hits the pedal to the metal, blasting Maniac the entire way. It's just a glorious, fun movie that should not work, but absolutely does. And I'm so excited that it was here.
Right? God, Julia Stiles' mother, hello.
Thank you, Julia Stiles.
Thank you, Julia Stiles. The bitch is back. Oh, so good. God.
Loved it.
Bless. See what I mean with like having a hypochondriac when I consume you than Orphan First Kill? Like, God, what a good year for movies. So weird.
What a great year.
Range.
The range, absolutely.
The range.
All right. Number 6.
Okay, so my number 6 is Nope, which is not on your list. I know this, but Nope. I don't know what I expected from Nope. I try to like stay out of the discussion. Like, I try not to like watch the trailers too much or like kind of engage in the Jordan Peele like examination and kind of splitting apart, because I sometimes feel like his movies have a tendency to maybe get overhyped. That's not kind of to say that that means his movies are bad, but I just think people get so excited, reasonably so, but it just like, it just getting overhyped and disappointed is always, it's never fun. But, this is his third movie, and he had been teasing about what it was going to be about for a very long time. And when I was like going to be like a fucking alien movie, I was like, okay, this is going to be incredible. And boy, oh boy, I saw it on the big screen. And talk about a spectacle. I think that what Jordan Peele did here, and also fuck everyone who's like, it's not a horror movie. It's a goddamn, like, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, E.T., blockbuster summer horror movie. I don't care what the fuck you say.
The Sky Rains Blood.
The Sky Rains Blood. Like, I think that this is one of those movies, like, that is a perfect example of having this kind of, like, entertainment spectacle mask and then being really fucking smart underneath it. I think there's a lot going on here in discussing, like, prey and predator relationships, power dynamics, Hollywood, like, capitalism, so many fucking things. But I also think just, like, the 4 core performances. We've got David Kaluuya as OJ. We've got Keke Palmer as Emerald, the brother and sister horse trainers that are incredible. We've got Stephen Yeun as Ricky Jute Park, who experienced the chimpanzee massacring his TV family with his child. And then we have Brandon Cutie Patootie as, like, the third person in, like, the trio, trying to figure out what's going on. And I just think this movie, I don't know, I think it's his most grounded movie. I think it's his most, like, typical movie. And I say that not as, like, a diss, but, like, I think it plays into, like, more expected tropes of, like, the summer blockbuster movie, but he still puts his twist on it, which I don't think that's a bad thing. I think there's some, like, the alien abduction moment with Jean Jacket is one of the scariest scenes of the entire year. And I just am so impressed by Jordan Peele's ability to take the sensibilities of a blockbuster, but also infuse, like, his intelligence into the movie. I just am always in awe of what he's able to create. And I just think, like, this was such an impressive feat of filmmaking. So
the alien design is stunning. It's stunning.
It's so good. I could have watched that movie forever. That was a movie I could have watched for a long time. I just love the world he created, and, like, the cinematography and just everything about it was just gorgeous. So that's my number 6.
It's a great movie.
It's weird that it's, like, and I was looking at my list, I'm like, I know it could be higher, but there's just so many other good movies that I think had even more of an impact on me. And it's just, like, wild that there's that many good movies this year that kind of, like, knock, for me at least, like, the Jordan Peele down to 6.
I really enjoyed it. It on one of many a list that I created on this that I went through, it was definitely on the list. It's not knocking it. It's a great film.
Yeah,
absolutely,
for sure. All right, what's your number 6?
Well, my number 6 is a bit of a cheat because I couldn't pick just one, and putting both of them on the list is a little greedy, and I think they work better as a pairing than they do apart. So my number 6 is Ty West. No, my number 6 is Pearl and X. I'm combining the two of them because while I think I prefer Pearl to X, it's because of X that I love Pearl.
What a weird year this has been, seeing who are the X people and who are the Pearl people. It's very interesting because I'm an X person. I appreciate Pearl, but I don't understand why so many people like it so much.
Oh, see, I loved it more, and I don't know. I honestly don't know why, but I think but the problem is that no matter how I look at it, one of them is always informing my opinion on the other, and I think they work like a package deal, sort of like true. Kill Bill, where both parts are good, but when taken together, they seem to be incredible to me. So from getting off on a scarecrow to giving us Toby Hooper goodness by feeding people to a giant alligator to the actual gasps I made with some of the deaths in the first one in X to the monologue that had me alternately sad and laughing to Mia Goth slowly stalking someone in like a one take with an axe. It was a fantastic time at a movies that evokes different periods of cinema in ways that can feel like a pastiche, but also feels more thematically like important than what Ty West is kind of known for with like The House of the Devil. Because I think instead of getting attention to detail correct and making a movie that looks like from that period, with these two films we're seeing, they're very evocative of those time periods that he's like, and particularly pinpointing, but bringing a modern flair and sensibility. And I honestly think you can see the growth of Ty West in these two films from some of his earlier stuff. And I think that these are probably my favorite films that he's made. So I am including both of them in a cop-out. Sure, yell at me if you want, but I think they go together.
I mean, I'll take that. I get it. It makes sense. If it's a weird package deal this year,
Yeah.
Oh, is Maxine coming out in 2023 or is that 2024?
Maybe
Did they give us a date?
2023?
I have no idea.
I don't think
Anyway,
they've given us a date, but
see, like, there was a few iterations of this list where X was on it. Like, I think X was on a list I submitted a couple weeks ago. And I was like, well, my list is different now, but that's fine. And I loved X. I loved what it was doing. I think it is seeing Ty West's growth as a filmmaker, going from the stuff we saw in, like, the mid to late aughts in the 2010s to, like, his work in television to his work now. I think he really has a really fascinating creative vision, and I think he executes that really well here. And I also think that it also shows, like, his eye for kind of period pieces that he has such a fondness for. I just don't think either one hit me as hard emotionally.
They didn't hit me emotionally.
Oh no, I'm just going by like the weird, how I was putting. It's like I think I didn't. I loved X and I enjoyed Pearl. It's incredible way that we got those two movies this year, and that after Ty West being gone for a decade and being like, I'm never coming back, being like, here, have two movies. I made one of these in like 2 weeks in New Zealand.
Yeah, seriously.
Fuck you. And it's like, fuck you. Fuck you. But yeah, no, very understandable. I mean, Pearl was beautiful. Like that. God, the aesthetics is just like Jesus, Mary and Joseph, incredible.
Yeah. All right. Top 5.
All right, we're at the halfway mark.
Here we go.
All right.
What is your number 5?
My number 5 is Barbarian.
Okay.
Yeah, I know it's farther down the list than some might have expected, but the top 4 are movies that made me cry a lot, so that's kind of what we're going on. It was a rough year depression-wise for me, y'all. Even though I got married, there was a lot of shit going on, and I just wanted to watch things that made me cry. But anyway, so number 5 is Barbarian. Of course, it's on this list. Biggest, I think, one of everyone's biggest shocks of the year. Like, no idea what it was. Zero marketing. Go in to watch it, and you're like, I'm sorry, what? Like, this is insane. This experience is just unhinged. And I know everyone was comparing it to Malignant. And then it circled back to the point where everyone's like, stop calling it Malignant. But I think it's a good comparison in terms of a movie that came out that took everyone by surprise and caught everyone off guard and proved that, like, I think Malignant and this as a pair coming out kind of show that, like, hey, you can make a just fucking insane horror movie that, like, goes off the rails. And that's fine. Like, you can also do that. Like, that is also something that we should be releasing into the world. And I think this hopefully paves the way for those kinds of movies, because Barbarian, like, I mean, it's like the Whitest Kid You Know guy directs it. Like, what the it had like, I don't know, it had no business being as successful as it was, and as incredible as it was, and as fucked up and gross and weird as it was. Another movie, a rare movie that I wish was longer, because I wanted more information about, like, what was really going on, but I don't know, man, just, it's hard to get surprised anymore with horror movies, and so having that experience with Barbarian was really special this year.
Yeah, it's a good movie.
It's a Disney movie.
It is. Wild.
If you really think about it. So, I'm sure we'll be talking about Barbarian later, but also just shout out to Justin Long, Scream King of 2022, both House of Darkness and Barbarian. The boy is
playing absolute dicks.
Absolute dicks. He's such a cute little dork. I want to kick him down a set of stairs.
I want to kiss him first and then kick him down the stairs. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good compromise. I can do that. All right, well, what's your number 5?
So apparently this is the year of satires for me, because my number 5 was another amazing time at the theater, as it skewered elites and kind of the hangers-on that want to touch greatness but really have nothing to add to it. It's The Menu.
I'm hungry. Cool. Okay.
I think it really nailed kind of like the foodie craze and the way people interact with food on, like, social media apps in particular now. The fact that Nicholas Holt's character says mouthfeel without any irony in it and is talking about it, I was like, I know people like this. As someone that is, like, trying to learn how to cook himself, like, you know, elevate his level of cooking, to see this made me, like, cringe in some ways. And one of my favorite bits from the movie is how put out Ralph, is it? I never know how to pronounce his last name.
Ray Fiennes.
Oh, is it Ray? Why did I say Ralph?
I think it's Ray Fiennes. It's like, so it's weird. It's like, you don't pronounce it like Ralph.
Oh, you don't?
No, you don't pronounce it like Ralph.
It like Ralph? Oh.
I don't think so. Hold on.
Well, dude who plays Chef Slowick, my favorite bit is that Anna Taylor-Joy's Margot is not here for any of the pretension that is going on, the pretense, and a lot of the dialogue between the two of them are like, what side are you on? And there's a discussion of people who serve versus the people who are served. And the way it presents its food is both stunning, funny, and witty. I love the title card presentation of everything, kind of announcing each course, to the way Slowick kind of commands his staff and the way that like the staff sleeps in the barracks. It's very militant. And I think it kind of underscores the militant way that high dining, and I'm using that in quotations, is like dished out. I'm thinking back to like
dished out.
Back to like watching The Bear, the TV show, where like we see a little bit of the way the main character was working at a high-end restaurant in New York, and the sort of like militant behavior that kind of goes into making sure that every little thing is perfect when it's all just going in your fucking belly. And where's the taste? Like the joy of being able to make a cheeseburger. I wanted to eat that fucking cheeseburger on the screen. Like just, this movie was like a satire that just like really touched my funny bone. And I loved it. And surprised me.
Yeah, it's a really good one. It's Rafe Fiennes. Rafe Fiennes.
Okay.
Yeah, the ensemble in this movie is incredible. And I love how much they really are just riffing on Chef's Table and really just like taking the piss out of everyone, not just one group. Everyone's kind of the butt of the joke, and I love that.
You had mentioned showing it to your chef parents. What did they think of this?
So we watched like a behind the scenes thing because I didn't realize it wasn't streaming, but I made them watch like a 15-minute behind the scenes featurette that was like a teaser, and they were dying. They were like, I'm so excited to watch the full movie with them because they were like so into it, and they were so into like what it was making fun of. And one of the chefs from A Chef's Table actually was like the food consultant and creative consultant and everything. So they were super excited to see that. And so I need to do like a full watch through with them, but they're very fascinated by it.
I can imagine.
And my mom loves Rafe Fiennes, so.
Hell yeah. All right. Four more to go. What is your number 4?
Okay, so the top 4, shockingly, was very hard to kind of rank, but my number 4 is Matty Doe's The Long Walk.
Okay.
Which I think I know where it falls on your list, but we won't talk about it yet. But this movie is a sucker punch, another emotional sucker punch. This is Maddie's 3rd feature film, and she is the only female Lao filmmaker and like only horror filmmaker from Laos, like her country, like where she her parents were born and where she now lives. I believe she lives there now. But The Long Walk is a time-traveling serial killer movie that involves the near future and ghosts. And there's a lot of elements, but Doe weaves them together beautifully. Doe's husband, actually, Christopher Larson, wrote this, but the way that they weave together all of these elements creates this, like, wild web of storytelling that, like, okay, you get all of this information and then it comes together in a really beautiful way that is absolutely heartbreaking. And I think that there is such a Doe's storytelling and vision and bringing the genre to a part of the world that doesn't have a lot of exposure in, especially the genre world. I think she's doing something really special in her work always, but this one was just like so deeply heartbreaking, and it was gorgeous to watch. Doe is a filmmaker that everyone needs to be watching. Her work is absolutely incredible. And yeah, it's a movie that I think about a lot, about having this like really deep impact on me and about constructions of memory and reality and what it means to be a good person. And yeah. So.
It's really good. It's on my shelf back there somewhere.
Yeah. But yeah, so what's your number 4?
So my number 4 is a movie that seems to have slipped through the cracks for horror watchers this year, which is sad because it's a surprisingly acerbic, dark comedy that fuses the romantic comedy genre with an exploration of death, depression, and grief. It's Mally Elfman's debut feature film, Next Exit.
Oh.
A movie that I saw back at Tribeca, and one that absolutely moved me to tears when it wasn't making me kind of anxiously giggle at things that I felt like I probably shouldn't be giggling at. It's about what happens when the world realizes that there is some sort of afterlife, but one that potentially negates religious ideals of heaven and hell. And it's about a scientist who starts enlisting people to, quote unquote, transition to the other side in order to explore what comes next. And so we follow Rahul Kohli's Teddy and Katie Parker's Rose as they have like a romantic comedy meet cute trying to rent a car to travel across the country. And there's only one car left. And so they both decide to go on a road trip to their eventual demise. And we start to learn about both of them, their failures, the regrets, why they want to take this journey, why they are thinking about leaving this world. The music is composed by Ariel Marks, who gave Shiva Baby its tension-filled kind of horror feel to it. And it really elevates this movie as well. I think it's probably tangentially related to horror, but it does rely on horror movie visual and audio indicators. And there's a ghost story opening, and there's like a phantom that seems to be following Rose through their journey. But it ultimately is this powerfully moving film about what makes us human and the way the grief and trauma and unrealized potential, which is something that was really big in this movie, this sort of like unfulfilled potential that both of them feel, can kind of haunt us more than like a simple ghost can. And I haven't been able to stop thinking about it since. It was a gut punch of a movie. It made me really sad. It made me laugh. It made me, I was not expecting what I got out of this movie. And I think that's sort of a theme about a lot of the movies of this year, particularly in this last bit, are just movies that I was not expecting and that made me fall back in love with cinema. And this one's really special, I think.
This is one I haven't seen yet that I want to see. I haven't been able to watch it yet, but I've heard incredible things from you and others as well. So I really need to check it out.
You really should, especially if you want a sad time.
I know.
I mean, if listeners have not seen it yet, I'm going to throw a bunch of content trigger warnings because it is about suicidal ideation. It is about suicide. It is about depression. It's about all these very heavy end of life type stuff. So if you're not in the right headspace for that, please do not watch this movie. But it is, I think it is a very powerful film.
Cool.
So that's my number 4.
Cool. All right.
3 to go.
3 to go. All right. So this is a movie that was my top of the year for a couple weeks, and I have moved it back a couple after careful, agonizing consideration. But my number 3 is Luca Guadagnino's Bones and All. Okay. A movie that many of you know punched me again in the gut. I cried through the end and all the way home after seeing it. I think that the story follows Taylor Russell, who plays a young girl who discovers that she is a cannibal. Her father can no longer deal with her flesh-eating tendencies, so she's left on her own devices and goes off to find her mother. And along the way meets other people like her and kind of starts forging relationships / boundaries / kind of discovering her new identity. It's basically a movie that I saw so much about is discovering parts of your identity that you aren't so proud of, but finding people that love you no matter what and see it. They don't love you in spite of it. They love you with it. Like I don't know. Like it's not just about like, it's something about found family that I just really love and gravitate towards. And I think something about the relationship between Timothée Chalamet's character and Taylor Russell's character was surprisingly tender to me. Like I think something about Timothée Chalamet is just like not super attractive to me. So like it's like hard for me to kind of see the attraction sometimes, but here the attraction is so much more intimate than just like physical. I know this sounds so shallow, but whatever. And I just think that there's a lot of electricity in this movie. I think it is just so beautiful and heart-wrenching and tragic. It made me cry forever. So yeah, that's my number 3.
I'm really mad that it's not on my list. I did really, really enjoy it. I don't know. There's something about it that kept me at arm's length, and I honestly don't know what it is, and I kind of want to rewatch it again. and experience it on its own terms.
You are the only person I've heard that, though. Like, there are people that have kind of seen it more emotionally distant, which I think is interesting. And I can see that, though. Like, there is something about it that I think could keep you at a distance. It didn't do that for me, but I can understand that feeling, like 100%.
And I'm really angry that it didn't resonate with me more, because it's like everything I love. I love Luca. Trent Reznor did the score. The cinematography is fantastic. The acting is great. I think Timothée Chalamet would have charisma and chemistry with the fucking Rock as a co-star. He oozes stuff. God, that was such a weird turn of phrase. I think, is it Taylor Russell? Is that her name?
Yeah.
I think she's phenomenal in it. Mark Rylance is absolutely terrifying in it. Like, there's so much of this that feels like it's right up my alley, but I don't know. There's just something about it that kept me apart in ways that his last two films didn't. And I don't know why that is. And that's why I never put it on my list, because I didn't know exactly what to say about it, because I'm still trying to wrangle with it. And I think I might need to just watch it again, and without like the expectation being there, if that makes sense.
It's weird. I feel like this is a movie that, all right, this is going to sound really weird. This is a movie that kind of asks you to more emotionally fill in the gaps. I think with Call Me By Your Name, it's much more charged with that, like, new love, like, first love desire. I think Suspiria, I haven't seen his other movie with Tilda Swinton and Dakota Johnson in it, but then Suspiria has, like, that tension, that horror, that kind of, like, immediacy. And in this one, he's a little bit more distant from his character, so I feel like you kind of have to do a little bit more work emotionally than I think we've seen in his movies.
It's a little more restrained, too, I think.
Restrained is the right
surprisingly.
word, too. It is more restrained, especially for a movie about cannibalism. So I definitely can understand that. Like, I think it's asking you to do a little bit more work and connecting with it, which maybe isn't always a good thing, but for me, I think it came effortlessly, and I think this is one of those movies that, like, you're either going to connect with it right away, or you're going to be like, ugh, I didn't, like... So I can see that, though. I definitely understand why people haven't connected with it. Someone called it one of the worst movies of the year, though, and I was like...
Oh, I saw that on...
And it was like Variety or Hollywood.
Yeah.
I was like, well, one, why are we doing worst of lists? Like,
really? We're doing that in 2022?
Like, I just want to do... My worst of list be worst marketing campaigns, and talk about movies that are really good that deserve better marketing campaigns. But
like the menu, the marketing behind that, the trailer for that, showing most of the movie. Shit.
Terrible. But yeah. So... It's not the worst movie of the fucking year.
No.
Asshole. Like,
not at all.
Crazy.
Watch more movies if you think this is the worst movie of the year. Like, Jesus.
Anything. But also, like, fuck you. That's so rude. But anyway, yeah. Bones and All is my number 3 of 2022. What about you, Terry? What was your number 3 of the year?
I mean, we made a Patreon minisode about it. It's Barbarian, which pleased me in ways that I want movies to please me. And I mentioned earlier... but I do think that as I've gotten older, I've been wanting movies to like surprise and delight me.
Yeah.
And I was thinking this year in particular, I was thinking back to our conversation with Nicholas Ash Bateman about The Sixth Sense, where I mentioned that movie kind of broke my brain and ruined how I watch movies, because I'm always looking at the narrative structure of the film. And so it's very hard for me to like be surprised anymore about a lot of movies. Yeah, I can be thrilled. I can be horrified. A good jump scare can like get me, of course, but I'm talking about like that surprise in a way that makes me believe in like the illusion of film, if that makes sense, and like the suspension of disbelief.
Yeah.
But like last year's Malignant, again, I'm going to compare it to Malignant. We have a film that understands structure and uses it to brilliantly disarm the viewer. We talked about bad marketing. Here's a great marketing campaign. The trailer. The way the trailer shows absolutely nothing, but makes you firmly convinced that Bill Skarsgård, the man that plays creepy characters, is up to no good. Just so good. It made me like want to know what's happening in this house, what's happening under this house. And it's a mystery box of a film. I loved everything about it, from the meet cute in the beginning to the way it slowly builds tension about what was in the house, to the ultimate question of why what's in the house is in the house. The way it evokes like Psycho with the jump in narrative perspectives, the restraint it shows in the front half. It's like, I joked on the Patreon episode that it's David Fincher in the streets and Sam Raimi in the sheets, but that is what this is. And it's one of my favorite moments of film. It made me excited about film. It made me excited about the future of horror film. I loved it. It's a great movie.
Yeah, 10 out of 10. Would agree. Definitely agree.
So,
Barbarian.
what would Sam Raimi in the sheets be? Very gooey, I guess, huh?
Gross.
You're welcome.
Ew. Alright. Well, anyway.
Lots of zoom shots.
Cool.
I'm just imagining now. Sorry about that. Number 2. 2 more.
Just imagined like a really obviously like fake vagina, but like practical effects vagina. But so then it's like turned. So instead of, the usual like labia situation, it's like this, and it goes, I'll swallow your soul, and there's like little eyes above it, and it's got little teeth.
Oh my god. I was like, where are you going with this? Because I was just imagining,
and then he sucks the soul out of your dick, like while you're fucking. It says, "I swallow your soul," and then sucks the soul out of your cock. I think I'm on
Sam
something
Raimi,
here.
get with us. I think this is an awesome idea for a movie. Let's do this and make this happen.
We're going for more like maybe less camp, but if you need me to help on another version of The Evil Dead that involves a lot of pornography, I'm here. So
let's make it happen.
Yeah. Anyway, what's my number?
How do you follow that? Number 2.
It's this complete tonal change, because it's just like there's no way to transition to this number 2. But number 2 is a movie that I saw earlier in the year, and I knew I was going to love because it is by filmmakers who I love. But this is Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead. Something in the Dirt. It's a found footage pseudo documentary about two neighbors who discover that there's something weird going on in their LA apartment building. And this is Benson and Moorhead coming back to their roots. They did Synchronic, they did some Marvel projects, but they have not lost sight of their indie horror roots. And Something in the Dirt is just another incredible example of how they're able to make these intimate stories about outcasts and maybe people would be considered misfits, and how they find love, not just romantic love, but platonic love in each other. I mean, we have an asexual character here. We have like a really sad gay character, and they're bonding and finding like platonic love in each other and comfort. And yeah, that becomes toxic, but that can happen in these kinds of relationships. And it's a really fascinating look at codependency and also the supernatural and kind of the extraterrestrial. So it goes this whole like, it has, again, like their movies always have this combination of like really emotional storytelling and like kind of intimate like drama, intimate life dramas, mixed in with like extraterrestrial cosmic horror, questioning like the universe and geometry and existence and dimensions and stuff. And I'm just such a fucking sucker for that. But in a year where I was feeling very cynical, I think movies like this are really important to make me like cry and feel warmth in my heart. So, I mean, I love their work constantly, but this really just, again, spoke to me and hasn't left my head since I saw it last year at Sundance, I think. So, I'm glad that this one is finally out in the world, and it's really fucking good.
It's wild to me that when we talked to the two of them on the podcast last year, we were talking to them about Synchronic. They had just like literally a day or two before we recorded, it was just announced that they were picked up to do the Moon Knight for Disney. And they said, yeah, we did this really quick, like kind of COVID like movie, this really small budget, movie that maybe will come out next year or something like that. And they was just very nonchalant about it, but it's a really good movie. Again, another movie that I'm like, probably should have included it on my list, because it is they're just great. They're lovely people. They do great things. I love when they can go back to these sort of resolution style, small, very intimate, 2-person mostly movie. It's great.
Yeah, and
I'm
again,
glad
like
it's on your list.
Well, and it's all kind of like. It's like kind of put as a pseudo documentary, things that they have found. They're filming each other, and so it's not like explicit found footage, but I consider it like found footage hybrid adjacent. So
wait, did you have any found footage on your list?
We'll talk about it.
Oh, All right. All right.
I'll make a case for that.
Forget that one.
In a second. But, so what about you at number 2?
My number 2 is a film that stuck with me from the first time I saw it earlier this year. It's Matty Doe's The Long Walk. And I feel like we could do a whole fucking episode on this film in order to do it justice.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it since I first saw it, so I had to go back over my notes a bit to remind myself about it, because my memory is a bit fuzzy, but there are images that it imparted in me, and there's a feeling that has not left me since I saw this movie. I still think about it even when I might not remember every little story bit, because it's a very complicated story, even though it seems like on the surface a very forward, like what's the word I'm looking for? It seems like a very straightforward story on the surface of things, but there's a lot going on in this movie that just is about holding on to grief. And that really hit me as someone that had like a rough 30s because of a particular grief moment that like I kept multiplying in my head and like kind of ruined me for a long time. And so I was thinking back about this character whose mom died from an illness, and he was a very young kid, and he is like stuck at that moment, and he keeps going back in time to do something to it. And every single time he does, he changes the future, but not in ways he wants. And the way that it's becomes this story about how this circuitous grief can turn you into a serial killer. And yes, it's a little bit on the nose because it's literally a serial killer, but also the way that you can look at a serial killer as sort of a metaphor for the way in which you just keep hurting yourself or killing yourself because of the pain that you felt at a specific time of your life. And it just, I don't know, it really affected me in ways I was not expecting. This was my first experience with a Matty Doe film. And I don't know what to say. It's absolutely haunting.
Yeah.
Gut punching, and so quietly disturbing that before you realize how fucked up and how horrible and how horrifying it is, it's too late. The movie lays this trap for you in such a expert way that I was so enamored with the storytelling. Like you said, Matty Doe is a filmmaker to watch, and I think we went back and we watched one of her previous films earlier this year, and I just think she gets better with every film, and I absolutely cannot wait to see what she's going to do next.
I agree.
I think she needs to be spoke of in the same realm as other like filmmakers that are getting a lot of the spotlight. She just is incredible, and she understands the horror genre so incredibly well. So that was my number 2.
Fucking men. So good.
Whew. All right. We're at
number 1.
Top of the list. The best movie of the year. And I'm insanely curious to hear what yours is, Mary Beth. So lay it on me. Which found footage movie is this?
So, okay. It's not... Okay, so I'll just say what it is, and then I'll jump into talking about it. So my number 1 is Jane Schoenbrun's We're All Going to the World's Fair.
Okay. Yep. All right. That makes sense.
So this movie is not explicitly found footage. It is like second screen horror mixed with narrative style elements. But I think that 2022 was also the year of the hybrid found footage movie. I think we saw that with Something in the Dirt. I think we're seeing this a lot in that found footage is still, alive and well, but people, like filmmakers, are adapting those techniques and combining them in really fascinating ways. And I think Jane Schoenbrun's film is such an incredible testament to how that can be done. And it is one of the most incredible portrayals of living online that I've ever seen, and the isolation of being online and the use of being online as a sense of comfort, a place to be yourself, a place to work things out about yourself, a place to just get lost and trapped in, and the predatory behaviors that happen online. Like, it's just captured so creepily. And it's just... there's could be debate if it's a horror movie or not about what's going on, but I think especially Anna Cobb's performance as Casey, and she's like carrying almost this entire film, this like teenage girl, is incredible. And just watching this teenage girl try to find community within YouTube videos and in just kind of shouting her videos to the void. It's this like deeply nihilistic in a way that's almost hopeful, and like there's not like we are all just alone jellyfishes floating in this weird digital void, and trying to find connection. And how do you find connection, and how do you know if those connections are valid? And I think it's such an important movie. I think and again, it's an incredibly trans narrative, as, you know, Schoenbrunn was transitioning as they were making this movie. And I just think it does capture I spoke with Schoenbrunn about the film and was talking about how this movie put into kind of images the ways that I felt as a teenager, of like not understanding myself. And while I am cis, it helped, like, this movie still got kind of maybe think about the ways I dissociated from my identity and who I was, and figuring out who I was as a kid online. And like, it is so hard to put into words what this movie made me like think about and feel, but like, it's Skinamarink from next year will have a very similar, will be high up in my list because of the ways it reached back into parts of my brain that I had not thought about in a very long time, and brought them to the forefront and made me analyze and understand them as more than just like these weird, these just like weird primal young emotions, but actually kind of analyze them as very important parts of my life. And yeah, I think Schoenbrunn's film is such an incredibly important queer look at digital horror and cyberspace, and I'm just very obsessed with it.
As you should be. I do think that I really enjoyed that movie, but I do think that because of my age difference and not coming of age online, it was not like as emotionally resonant for me as it was for people probably around your age or a little bit younger, I would say too. Because for me, it was just like I was caught up in the idea of like creepypastas and telling stories, but like I've never participated in any of that. So for me, it was like this very foreign concept for me. But it was a very good movie, and I'm really glad that it's on your list at number one, because I think it's a really well done movie, and I want more people to see it for sure.
Fucking too. All right, Terry.
All right.
Now it's your turn. What's your number one?
You know, this was a last minute change up for me, because when I initially watched it, I didn't care for it, but it kind of stuck with me and started churning in my head to the point of obsession. And I've decided that David Gordon Green's Halloween Ends is the best movie of the year.
I'm gonna fucking light you on fire.
I'm being serious. The way it deconstructs the Michael Myers legacy. I'm
fucking absolutely flame you. What is happening right now?
To the way it explores the seeping evil in Haddonfield as a metaphor for the country. It's just absolutely brilliant and riveting stuff here, Mary Beth. I don't know what you don't see about this number one choice. I'm kidding. It's You Won't Be Alone. I had to have some. I feel like everyone knew that it was going to be You Won't Be Alone for me, because I've been fucking talking about the movie for all year, so I had to like throw a little bit of a curveball. But yeah, so like You Won't Be Alone starts with the woman being forced to give a child to an old witch, and she begs that old witch to at least give her until the child is old or before taking her. And while the witch agrees, the woman hides in like a sacred religious cave with the child so that the witch can't enter and take her, but of course the child can't ever leave. And as the child gets older, she wants to venture out behind the confines of this cave, and the mom tells her, "Do you understand what devils prowl out there?" Followed by, "They would tear you to pieces outside of this wall." And then finally, "Do you know what I go through for you?" And so it's this like, this look about trying to protect people from the world, because the world is an evil, horrible place, but also at the same time kind of squelching them. And so, boy, this movie kind of hit me hard as someone...
Yeah.
I didn't think I was going to get emotional with this.
I love you.
As an exploration of how horrible the world can be, but also how joy-filled it can be, this movie hit. I have a lot that I wanted to say. I've written it down because I knew it was going to be hard, but I just can't. Whew.
And that's why it's your number one, baby.
But it also, like, I love the way it kind of explores sexual and gender Oh
my god, that was so bad.
Really?
Oh my god. Riggins, why?
Riggins, why are you doing this to me? Yeah, so the way it kind of explores sexual and gender politics as well. Politics? What the fuck? Politics as well. Well,
Ew.
I don't want to know about that. As well as like the grief and the horror of the world. Some that is caused, yes, by this cruel witch, but also a lot of it is caused by people. And it is a movie that it's a slow burn and it's all about that, but this character also experiences joy, and joy in like such a raw form. And so the way that you can look at this film so many different ways. It explores existence through different gender binaries. I would honestly love to read a trans or non-binary writer discuss this movie, because I think that there's a lot of interesting depictions of gender in it. It does require a lot of dedication on the part of the viewer. The main character doesn't speak, but we spend all the time in her head, and so we get this like interior monologue that is spoken in broken English because she's not experienced the rest of the world, and she doesn't know how to like fully form sentences in outside of like these very basic thoughts. And I don't know. It's a hard world. It presents this world that is full of pain, but like there's also immense joy in it.
Yeah.
And when we get to the kind of finale that's sort of like a gut punch of a finale, there's like, she says 2 words, and yet. And I just start crying because it's like, there's so much horror, but there's also goodness. Fucking hell. So yeah, that's my number 1. Terry cries again.
I mean, that's how you fucking know it deserves that spot, though, that it's able to have that. And, like, I think that reaction also speaks to a lot of the movies that came out this year. Like, I know we talked about not all movies hitting, but when they hit, like, they hit hard this year.
Oh, yeah.
And I think You Won't Be Alone was one that I was so impressed with and didn't hit my list, but, like, again, another movie that I think had a lot of really great buzz out of the festivals, but then, like, kind of fizzled away when it came out. And I think... yeah, it's like a slow burn, witchy horror, but it's also so beautiful. Like, it's definitely one of the more hopeful movies of this year, too. Like, it's I think that movie is kind of almost like nihilism at its like most perfect form, and like it's dark and like things don't seem worth it, but at the same time there is something worth living for. So like, fuck it, like you might as well just keep living.
Yep.
And even if, you know, things seem terrible or there doesn't seem to be any reason to live, you might as well just fucking live anyway, because there are beautiful things about it. And it is like a kind of perfectly nihilistic film in a way that I think is necessary. I think there is a lot of hope that we don't see. And yeah, it takes place in the past, but I think it does have a really really good message about finding hope and focusing on hope, even in the face of tragedy, which I think we could all probably fucking use.
Yeah, for sure. Whew. Yeah.
So we had wild lists this year. I know we were super really excited to talk about how like our lists, because I don't think our lists have ever been so different. Like we had, I think, Long Walk, Orphan, and Barbarian as our 3 overlaps.
That's
but
it.
We usually have way more than that. But like this year was
it's normally just like a flip flop of which one is our third or second or first, but
I love that there was not a lot of overlap. I think like there were so many movies that were so deeply personal for so many filmmakers too, that I think there were a lot of movies that were like destined to find the sad, traumatized queers that love them, and like that's it.
Yep.
But yeah.
Bullseye.
Yeah.
It was a very eclectic year too.
It was. I mean,
a lot of diversity of film out there, I would say.
Yeah, and like I wanted my list to try to reflect that. Like I wanted to have a decent number, like I wanted to have some like women and non-binary people and queer people, people of color. Like I think at this point, when making top 10 lists, and I am by no means perfect, and I know, like, you know, we're still working within a canon that is controlled by cis white men. But I think it is important to, like, when making these lists, understand that you should expand your view and, like, perspectives. I think you do yourself a disservice as a horror lover, no matter how much of no matter hardcore, new, writer, just a lover. I think you do yourself a disservice in only focusing on, like, the big releases. And understandably, it could be it's an access thing. I know that sounds elitist of me, like, saying you're doing a disservice, but I think in an age where more things are accessible, smaller titles are accessible on digital, I think it is important to, like, kind of keep your ear to the ground as much as you can if you love horror, and, like,
broaden that horizon.
And especially, like us, if you are in a space where people, you know, listen to your podcast, read your writing, I think you are especially responsible for watching movies that aren't just the big releases, that aren't just like the ones that will be popular. I think you need to, as a film writer, like expose yourself to things that maybe aren't going to be on the radar. And like, I think it's our job as writers to try to highlight that. As podcasters, writers, some kind of mini tastemakers in horror, whatever, I think it is important for us to like really keep an eye on everything coming out. And I think this year is such an example of like, if you'll blink and you'll miss something. And obviously no one's perfect. Like there's no way you can watch every single title.
No.
But I also think when people make generalizations like, oh, horror sucks, it's like, you have absolutely no idea like what is out there and what is being made and what has been made recently. Like you just aren't looking hard enough. So I think this is one of the best years for horror in a very long time.
Yeah, I think consistently it's one of the best years for sure.
So, weird.
Wow.
Weird.
Weird. But that was 2022 in a nutshell.
That was 22 in a nutshell, everybody. So, thanks for not just listening to this episode, but listening to us for the whole year. We want to hear what you think about our list, but also we want to know your favorite episodes. Maybe there was a discovery from Little Cuts that you watched that you really like. Like, what was how do you agree with any of our lists? Let us know. You can send us an email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com, or you can let us know on Twitter. I am at MB McAndrews.
I'm at Gailey Dreadful.
And of course, follow the podcast and let us reach out to us on the podcast Twitter account at Scarred Podcast.
And please don't forget to review, rate, and subscribe. Thank you, everyone who is subscribed to us on Patreon. We really appreciate you helping kind of defray the costs and supporting us. It means a lot to us, and I hope you guys have enjoyed I guess it's been like, what, 4 months? 4 months of content we put out so far? So thank you for that, and hopefully you'll stick with us next year. And if you're holding on to, some of those Patreon dollars and want to throw it our way, we would love to have you join us on Patreon. We got some,
thank you.
Hopefully fun things coming up your way in 2023. So
thank you to Eric Parr for our artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for our music. Thank you everyone for listening all the time. Your support means everything to us. Please stay safe out there. Happy New Year. Stay creepy.
And until next time, where's the stop?